facing that breakthrough in the Middle East, the region, waiting for the moment that we'll see fighting stop in Gaza and dozens of hostages held there since that October 7th terror attack actually walk free. And we are learning that this could come as soon as Sunday, according to the Qataris. That is, if the Israeli war cabinet signs off on this new deal. They're supposed to meet sometime later on tonight to possibly do exactly that. We are also seeing celebrations across the region after more than a year of brutal fighting in the Middle East. In Gaza, cheers you see from those big crowds, including children on the streets there. They're chanting, truce, truce, truce. And that is the scene in Tel Aviv, emotional, with families now holding on to this new hope, this renewed hope that the people they love will come home soon. The White House confirming that 2 of the Americans held hostage will be some of the first released. Here's the nuts and bolts of this deal, right? This agreement is going to go through in 3 phases. You got this 42-day ceasefire and the release of 33 Israeli hostages in phase 1. Now, the IDF is not going to withdraw its troops from Gaza until all of the nearly 100 hostages still believed to be there are released. There are a lot of questions still ahead about just how fragile this deal actually is, about how many of the nearly 100 hostages believed to be in Gaza are still alive, and whether this could actually be the end of the fighting inside Gaza, that the health ministry there has killed more than 46,000 people and triggered a massive humanitarian crisis as well. We've got team coverage tonight. Aaron Gilchrist standing by near the White House, but I want to start with our chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, who is joining us here in Washington on this very big day.
What a day to be here.
Fast-moving developments, basically every hour. We had some inkling earlier in the week that this ceasefire could come through as quickly as it did. It has, and now we're looking ahead to Sunday. Explain what has to happen for us to get there.
Yeah, there's been enormous pressure, and Aaron will get into that, political pressure, both from the Biden administration and also from the incoming Trump administration. One way of putting it is that neither side, and if you want to call that Hamas and Israel, wanted to be seen to scupper the deal, to bring the deal down. I think that's one of the reasons it got to this point. It was announced by the Prime Minister of Qatar, who's also the Foreign Minister, a breakthrough for them, an important moment for them. They've been working on it a long time, and they announced this deal. It was delayed. I mean, it was nail-biting stuff. It was delayed, but in the end, they've got it over the line. It is complex. I mean, you laid it out there, right?
And that's just phase 1, by the way.
Well, phase 1. So phase 1 is more than 30 hostages released, as you mentioned, and Palestinian prisoners released at the same time. And when you look at the deal, we've seen a section of it. When you look at the actual kind of language, it is incredibly complex. You saw there too, though, the celebrations. Celebrations is one way of describing it. Another way is people breathing out. It's different in different parts of the region, in Israel and in Gaza. And we, as NBC News, have been able to talk to people on both sides of that line. Take a listen.
It is indescribable joy. We want to return to our homes, even by crawling. We missed our homes, our families, our loved ones, and the smell of our neighborhood. I am telling you, I will return crawling.
It's like a roller coaster. I'm not breathing right now. We don't know if they're on the list, if they're gonna come back in the first phase, if they're alive.
There you go. That Israeli saying that he's actually not breathing out, and that's not surprising because the 3 stages of this deal mean that there is obviously the real potential that it could collapse. The first deal did collapse. The negotiations have been fraught and difficult and fragile, but they will effectively continue through this process. And by the way, not all the hostages will be released immediately. There's going to be more than a month before all of the hostages are potentially released. That's a long time in that region. I'm sorry to say that a lot can go wrong, despite the fact that, of course, this is a day of hope.
A day of hope indeed. And I have to tell you, Kieran, forgive me, I have turned to type a little bit because we're just getting some news into us literally in the last 90 seconds here. Of the names of the 2 American hostages who are believed said to be released in this first tranche of hostage releases. Keith Siegel, who is 64 years old, and Sagi Dekolchen, who is 35 years old. We have pictures of them here.
Yeah, can you imagine
U.S.
that?
citizens, set to be. Listen, we knew that 7 American citizens had been taken hostage, I believe, initially.
Yeah, I always, at a moment like this, we show those pictures.
Yeah.
I just think about families watching, potentially, because we're talking about American hostages. Families could be watching.
Adrian
us right
Dekolchen,
now.
his wife, was released during the last round of hostage releases, and now her husband is set to be released here as well.
Right. So this is just an extraordinarily tense time for them. Again, as I said, you can describe this as a day of celebration, but actually for many, including the families of those hostages, it continues to be a period of fear and hope and tension.
Because, as you say, there is a lot, frankly, that could take this train off the tracks here. You know this region so well. You've been covering this and so much else in the area as well.
Yeah.
This was a moment where you had to have these critical players coming to the table to have the discussion, not just the Israelis, obviously not just Hamas, but as you say, the Qataris were deeply involved. The U.S. was involved, which we'll get into in a second as well.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And it's 15 months that have derailed hopes that there might be a larger settlement in the Middle East. So we know now that Saudi Arabia was on the brink of agreeing a normalization deal with Israel. That whole thing has been thrown aside. The terrible death and injuries in Gaza, tens of thousands of people, has left a imprint on the Arab world in the Middle East that it will take a long time for them to recover from. And then there's the question of Iran and how the incoming Trump administration deals with the challenge of Iran. This is not over. This is just another chapter.
A lot to cover in the weeks to come, and especially in the hours to come as we look ahead to Sunday. Keir Simmons, thank you very much for being here. We'll talk more with you as we get more developments. Let me bring in Aaron Gilchrist now.